She spoke with conviction, revealing a fragment of a license plate. The first three letters, Y. Casey Monroe's eyes darted to her, where Sarah still held onto Emily tightly. Experienced a wave of despair. Her daughter, once brimming with vitality, had. She withdrew into her own world, and as the days passed, it only deepened for Emily. She ceased her playful antics, put away her art supplies, and withdrew from the world outside, recoiling at. The sight of passing cars kept her awake, and when slumber finally embraced her, her nights were haunted by silent nightmares. Her petite form writhed against unseen dangers. Her cries never echoed, only breaths of dread that stirred her parents from their slumber in the stillness of night. As the night unfolded, Sarah and David explored every delightful tale, savoring their favorite foods together. The cherished stuffed bunny, despite all efforts, could not reach the child who seemed to be drifting away more and more. On a distant evening, Sarah found herself seated across from David at the kitchen table, her gaze fixed intently upon him. Worn thin by fatigue, the therapist softly suggested a companion animal. Therapy dog, David ran a weary hand through his hair. Do you really think that'll help? I don't know, Sarah admitted, her voice tinged with uncertainty, but I'm willing to try anything. Neither of them could have anticipated what lay ahead. Little did they know how profoundly that choice would alter the course of their lives. For Emily had experienced a loss. In the depths of her voice, there existed a presence, a listener, and his name was Rex. The atmosphere within Dr. Laura Bennett's Animal Rehabilitation Center was heavy with the sharp scent of antiseptic mingled with a rich, earthy musk of fur, enveloping the room in a stillness that was only broken by the rhythmic ticking of the clock mingles with the occasional scratch of claws against the tiled floor, all centered around a large orthopedic bed. By the window, a German shepherd rested quietly, his deep brown eyes observing every movement with keen attention. With a quiet intensity, he moved through the world. His name was Rex, and once has been among the most exceptional K-9 officers in the city's police force, a dog whose instincts and training had saved lives. Yet now he carried the scars of the sacrifice of one particularly jagged mark running down his right flank, a permanent reminder. The haunting memory of that fateful night 3 years past, when a raid brought his career to an abrupt end. In a daring act, Rex charged at an armed suspect, determined to rescue a kidnapped child. In a moment of uncertainty, the man lunged at him, wielding a knife intended for an officer. With a fierce determination, Rex had brought the suspect to heel, his claws sinking deep into flesh as crimson stained his fur. Yet, in the months that followed, the injury lingered, never truly mending, casting a shadow over his mobility, and the department, facing financial constraints, made the tough choice to let him go. Was marked for euthanasia, considered unfit for service, until Laura intervened. Dr. Bennett had dedicated years to the therapy animal program, focusing on how these remarkable creatures could aid in healing trauma. When she learned of Rex's situation, she became determined to adopt him, believing wholeheartedly that with a keen intellect and steadfast devotion, she was ready to put those qualities to the ultimate test. With a sense of anticipation, Sarah Carter perched on the edge of her chair, her fingers tightly clutching the fabric as if it were a lifeline. Emily stood behind her mother, peeking out from behind her shoulder, her skirt gently swaying with the movement. A young girl had chosen silence since the event that transpired 2 weeks prior, and despite her visits to therapy, no progress had been made. With a soft touch, Laura knelt down to meet Emily's gaze, her voice a soothing whisper. "Hi, Emily. Once upon a time, there was a woman named Laura who dedicated her days to working with extraordinary dogs, canines that brought joy and assistance to children in need." Emily remained silent, her green eyes reflecting the shadows of the frightening experiences she had endured. With a flicker of movement, the large German shepherd named Rex sat patiently, just a few feet away. With ears attuned, he remained still, observing her with keen interest. With a calm and reassuring demeanor, Laura inquired, "Would you like to meet him?" The little girl, however, remained silent. She didn't run, and that was a start. Sarah smoothed her daughter's hair. "He's such a lovely dog, dear. He once served as a police dog." With a gentle wave, Laura pointed to Rex, her voice barely above a whisper. The command to stay was given, yet the German shepherd did not comply. With a flicker of uncertainty, Laura glanced back at Emily, her voice gentle yet firm. "You don't need to come any closer if it makes you uncomfortable. Rex will patiently remain here, but if you sense the moment is right, you may extend your hand, and he shall approach you." Emily lingered in her thoughts, pausing for what felt like an eternity as she remained still. Staying still for a moment, she gradually emerged from behind her mother, taking careful steps forward. A small hand rose, cautious yet purposeful, while Rex stood motionless, patiently awaiting the next moment. As the last signal was given, Laura's subtle nod prompted him to gently lower his head and take a. With a cautious step forward, then another, and yet another, as his warm breath caressed Emily's palm, a subtle change stirred within her. Her fingers curled ever so slightly. As her fingers glided through the dog's dense coat, a spark ignited within her, and Sarah gasped in surprise. With a gentle touch, she pressed her hand to her mouth. It was the first moment Emily had dared to reach out to anything or anyone since the attack. Tears glistened in her eyes as she softly murmured, "Oh, darling." Emily's tiny fingers nestled further into Rex's fur, holding on tightly. She looked at him, her anchor in a world that had become frighteningly unpredictable. With a smile, she said, "That's a good girl, Emily. Rex likes you." The child remained silent, yet in the weeks that followed, Rex and Emily grew closer than ever. At home, she would sit. For hours, she sat beside him, her delicate fingers gently following the scar that marked his side, as if uncovering a tale etched in his skin. In the stillness of the night, nightmares stirred her from slumber, yet it was the rhythmic thump of Rex's heartbeat that brought her solace. Though she remained silent, she picked up her crayons once more, creating simple yet expressive drawings. An image of a girl and her dog standing side by side, facing mysterious shadowy figures in the background. In the afternoon, as Emily sat on the floor of Laura's office, she watched Rex put on a performance. Once upon a time, a simple trick unfolded when something truly remarkable occurred. A good boy, she was, and her story began to weave itself into the fabric of the extraordinary. Whispered. The words floated gently in the air, so soft that for a fleeting moment, Sarah wondered if they were merely a figment of her imagination. Yet as she turned, she saw Emily gazing at Rex, her lips slightly parted in awe, as if she, too, had surprised herself. Tears filled Sarah's eyes. It may not have been grand, but it was a beginning. Laura softly rested her hand on Sarah's arm, and she whispered, "Sometimes trust is the first step on the journey to rediscovering your voice." Sarah squeezed her hand, and together they would follow wherever that trust might lead, knowing it would take them somewhere meaningful. They never anticipated stepping into a courtroom where a monster would, at last, reveal its true form. The air within the courtroom hung heavy with tension, the gallery seats brimming with eager spectators. As the atmosphere thickens with intrigue, families of journalists and legal observers gather, their eyes fixed on the unfolding drama of one of the most high-profile trials. In the heart of the room, a tale was on the verge of unfolding. There sat the defendant, Richard Hale, alongside the attorney stood there, his expression a mask of calm. Even as the heavy charges loomed over him, he seemed unfazed, eerily serene. His fingers danced in a steady beat upon the gleaming surface of the wood. At the defense table, she sat alongside her mother, Emily Carter, gripped the leash of Rex firmly, her tiny fingers encircling the sturdy fabric, a lifeline in her grasp. The German shepherd sat alert beside her, ears pricked forward, ready for whatever came next. Deep brown eyes occasionally met Hale's gaze, his nose twitching as if sensing something. There was a sense of something familiar wafting through the air. "All rise," echoed the voice of the BFF. Through the chamber, Judge Mark Sullivan made his entrance, his robe flowing gracefully behind him as he took his seat at the elevated bench. With a keen gaze, he surveyed the room, his sharp eyes flitting over the faces before pausing momentarily on Emily and Rex. He had already made a ruling allowing the therapy dog to be present, yet he understood that this decision was merely the beginning of a much larger tale. Before we embark on the opening statements, Sullivan's deep voice resonated, capturing the attention of all present as he emphasized the need for universal acceptance. The court will soon listen to arguments concerning the presence of the support animal in these matters. Carefully weighed and considered. Proceedings, Michael Graves, the defense attorney, rose gracefully from his seat and he adjusted his tie, "Your Honor," and began with a tone of politeness, yet resolute as we grasped the prosecution's plea for sentiment. The presence of this animal, a large German shepherd, is quite detrimental. The courtroom may stir deep feelings within the jury, potentially leading to an unfair bias against my case. We kindly ask that the dog be removed during the testimony of Jenna Collins, the lead. The prosecutor rose promptly, addressing the court. "Your Honor, in regard to Emily Carter's case, years have passed, and she stands as a testament to resilience, a survivor of trauma, navigating life with the unique challenge of selective mutism that emerged from her experiences. Rex is not merely a spectacle. He serves a vital role as a medically necessary support animal. With his presence, Emily finds the strength to engage in these proceedings, free from overwhelming distress." Judge Sullivan reclined in his seat, with an expression that revealed nothing. "I have already gone through the documentation provided by the child." The psychologist and the animal behaviorist observed as the dog lingered, a soft murmur weaving through the atmosphere. In the courtroom, a mix of nods and murmurs filled the air, with some in agreement while others grumbled quietly, their discontent palpable as Graves stood before them. He pressed his lips together, a frown etched on his face, yet he chose not to engage in further debate as he turned away to his seat, casting a fleeting look at Hale, who sat there with an unsettlingly blank expression. The trial commenced in. The prosecution, with a serious demeanor, crafted a haunting narrative of Hale's actions, a tale woven with threads of manipulation, deception, and predatory behavior that stretches across the years. The elderly neighbor, Martha Jenkins, was among those called to share her account, vividly recalling the harrowing moment she witnessed. Hale attempted to entice Emily into his van, her voice quivering as she recounted the moment he seized the child's arm. Before making her escape, Emily remained quiet and still as the confrontation unfolded around her. Her petite figure seemed to vanish against the imposing wooden chair, her fingers occasionally dancing across its surface. She tightened her grip on the leash, never releasing it, even when the tension grew too strong. How she would gaze down at Rex, who stayed utterly motionless, his silence profound. Her presence grounded her, and then it was time for her testimony. A hush fell over the crowd. In the courtroom, as Emily was softly guided to the witness stand, Sarah Carter accompanied her with a steady presence. With a watchful eye fixed on her daughter, she gently assisted Emily into the seat before taking a step back, her every instinct attuned to the moment. The strength surged within her, fueled by the longing to lift her daughter into her embrace and carry her away from this place. Jenna Collins approached with a gentle grace, her demeanor soft and inviting. With a warm smile, she greeted Emily, saying, "I know this feels a bit daunting, but keep in mind, you're not obligated to speak if you don't wish to. A simple nod or shake of the head will suffice if that feels more comfortable for you. At ease, and should you ever seek a moment of respite, feel free to reach out." Emily's eyes remained fixed elsewhere, her gaze distant, was fixed on the table, her breathing shallow, but then, as if sensing her presence, with a sense of trepidation. Rex leaned his body gently against her leg, and she extended her hand down too. With a gentle grasp of his fur, she nodded slowly, her voice steady as she spoke to Jenna. "Oh, Emily, can you share with us who graced your yard with their presence that day?" With a moment of hesitation, she kept her gaze lowered, but after what felt like an eternity, she gradually lifted her arm and directed her finger straight at Richard Hale. The defendant's expression remained unchanged, yet a flicker of something danced in his eyes. With a fleeting flicker in his gaze and a subtle clench of his jaw, Graves sprang to his feet. "Objection! The child has been shown images of my client multiple times before the trial." Judge Sullivan raised a hand, declaring the identification to be unreliable, and overruled the objection. "The jury shall assess the trustworthiness of the witness." As Jenna carried on with what Emily had done. On that day, the man spoke, but the child remained silent. Instead, she created a gentle flick of her wrist, a quiet indication. It was the very same gesture she had used before. Before the moment when Rex grasped the situation, the German shepherd reacted. In an instant, his ears perked up, muscles coiling with tension, and a deep, primal growl rumbled from within him. It emanated from deep within him, not with aggression, but as a cautionary signal, a response to the unfolding situation. Sent a tremor through the courtroom, as even Judge Sue leaned in, his brow furrowed in intrigue. With a furrowed brow, Graves rose once more, urgency lacing his voice. "Your Honor, I must object to this." It was a scene filled with drama, yet Sullivan remained oblivious, his attention captured by Rex, who had vanished from sight. Completely motionless, his full attention fixed on Hale, as if he had caught a whiff of something familiar. He could sense it was the identical response he experienced when Emily first laid eyes on Hale. In a flash of intuition, a thought ignited within Sullivan, prompting him to turn his gaze toward Jenna. "Miss Collins," he said, his voice carefully measured, "has this animal had any prior experiences?" In the midst of the proceedings, Jenna found herself pausing, her hesitation palpable. "Not to my knowledge, Your Honor," she replied, her voice steady yet reflective. Sullivan cast a glance toward the defense table and inquired, "Mr. Hale, have you ever come across this dog?" Before, for the first time, Hale revealed genuine emotion, his fingers, which had been the gentle tapping that once flowed so smoothly, had transformed into a tight fist, and he stood there, unwavering, in a moment of stillness. Jenna's eyes grew wide as a sudden realization washed over her. She turned to. Her co-counsel leaned in, sharing a quick whisper, and, just a heartbeat later, a member of the prosecution team burst from the courtroom, urgency in their steps. "What is happening?" Graves demanded, his patience wearing thin as he turned to Jenna. With a composed demeanor, she maintained an expression that revealed nothing. "Your Honor, I request a short recess," she stated firmly. "New evidence might have emerged that pertains to this case." As Judge Sullivan took the time to examine her closely, a lengthy pause lingered before a nod, signaling a 15-minute recess as the courtroom began to empty, filled with hushed whispers. Filled the air, speculation spread like wildfire. Had Rex just recognized Richard Hale? And if so, from whence? Something whispered to Judge Sullivan that the answer lay within that mystery. One question had the power to alter the course of everything. The burden of the case pressed heavily upon the prosecution team as fresh developments emerged. Richard Hale had emerged as a figure of intrigue, officially connected to several mysterious disappearances, yet the complete truth remained elusive without Emily's insight. In the courtroom, the testimony hung in the air, balancing precariously on the brink of doubt. Yet, what unfolded next was beyond anyone's wildest expectations. The true essence of the mystery lay not in the innocence of the child, but rather in the German shepherd who never left her side. The The morning was crisp as the prosecution team, under the guidance of Jenna Call, unveiled their forthcoming motion to introduce. New forensic evidence revealed that the soil samples discovered in Richard Hale's van had been. Upon careful examination, the findings led us to a particular spot, one that lies far from the bustling crowds. An abandoned cabin nestled deep in the northern woods, where Detective Jack Monroe had been diligently working on. For decades, similar cases have hinted at the implications of this situation, Your Honor, as Collins eloquently pointed out. Your Honor, we respectfully request a 24-hour recess to pursue a vital lead that has come to our attention. This evidence may just be the final piece of the puzzle needed to bring this case to a close. Michael Graves' defense attorney swiftly interjected, Your Honor, this is nothing more than just a mere delay. My client has already endured a thorough journey. There are inquiries being made, yet no concrete proof links him to these alleged cabin soil samples, which remain merely circumstantial. Best, Judge Sullivan's stern gaze silenced Graves. Motion granted, he ruled. As the judge's gavel struck, the courtroom fell silent, and the prosecution was granted a mere 24 hours before the next chapter of this unfolding drama would begin. Monroe and his team sprang into action, guided by the vigilant presence of Rex Emily. The Guardian was summoned for the mission, and his response to the hail was unmistakable. Perhaps he could sense something that human eyes had overlooked. The search team arrived at the desolate scene. By early afternoon, the cabin stood in an unsettling silence, the surrounding trees whispering secrets of the day. As the wind softly whispered, a thick layer of dust settled upon the porch, yet it remained faint. Footprints trailing toward the back door hinted at recent movement, and Rex was there. As they drew near the cabin, the dog's ears perked up, and his nose twitched with curiosity. With a keen intensity, he twitched, his body stiffening, tail erect, muscles poised like a coiled spring. In the spring, he released a low growl, pacing restlessly at the threshold. This place is wrong, Monroe, he murmured, a sense of unease hanging in the air. Rex whispered, sensing an unseen presence. The team moved forward with care, weapons at the ready. Within the cabin, the scene was minimal. A solitary table, a simple cot, and an empty food can neatly stacked in one corner. Yet, as Monroe's gaze wandered, he caught sight of something unusual on the wooden floor towards the back. The wall bore an odd seam, a subtle indentation that felt distinctly out of place. He rapped on it, a hollow sound echoing back, as if something lay hidden beneath. With swift precision, the officers pried the boards loose, revealing what lay beneath. A narrow staircase spiraled down into a hidden basement, sending a shiver down their spines as the air grew cold. And damp as they descended, the dim light unveiled a chilling scene. The children's. In the dimmest corner, a collection of cherished belongings lay scattered. Old toys, small shoes, a faded pink backpack, all whispering stories of days gone by. Once upon a time, there was a girl named Emma Sullivan, an 8-year-old who had gone missing, bound yet still clinging to life. For 6 long months, her complexion remained ghostly, her garments tattered and worn. Yet, the instant her eyes beheld, with tears of recognition and relief welling in her eyes, she whispered for help, her voice hoarse. From disuse, Rex sprang to life, tugging at his leash and letting out a whine as, upon sensing the deep suffering this child had endured, Monroe hurried forward, unlocking the door to hope. With gentle strength, he lifted Emma into his embrace, whispering reassuringly, "You're safe now. We've got this." Emma held onto him tightly, her delicate frame quaking as the quest had at last reached its conclusion. An end, but the nightmare lingered on. Back at the courthouse, the news of, as the tale unfolded, Emma's rescue ignited excitement, and the gallery buzzed with anticipation while Collins readied himself for the climactic moment. In the face of the storm, the judge granted permission for Emma's discovery to take the stand as evidence. in conjunction with the soil sample that connected the cabin to his vehicle, Mr. Hale Collins spoke to the defendant's voice cut through the air, sharp as steel, as she demanded, "How do you explain the presence of an abducted child locked in a basement on A? For the very first time, the property was linked directly to you." Richard Hale appeared visibly shaken. "I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered, as Jenna Collins pressed forward. Her tone remained steady as she revealed, "Your DNA was discovered on the chains, and the tread of your vehicle's tires corresponds with the evidence. Footprints in the snow lead away from the cabin, and the most significant revelation is that Emma Sullivan still breathes, meaning she can bear witness against you." The gravity of those words hung heavily in the air. In the courtroom, a lone survivor stood as a witness, capable of unraveling the defense that Hale had meticulously constructed. The facade he had built started to fracture as his lawyer leaned in, urgency lacing their words. Yet it was evident he was trapped and, once more, the scene unfolded as Rex, resting at Emily's feet, suddenly raised his head. His eyes narrowed at the Hale, his hackles rising as a deep growl vibrated through him. As the German shepherd entered the room, a hush fell over the space, each step measured and purposeful, with his gaze fixed on the defendant. It was a look of recognition swept through the crowd, causing everyone to flinch. There stood the man, his arrogance unyielding even in the face of it all. The trial was now causing visible beads of sweat to form, his hands clutching the edge of the table as he turned to his attorney, whispering urgently. Then in a voice that barely rose above a murmur, in a hushed tone, he declared his desire to alter his plea, and gasps rippled through the room as the judge looked on. Sullivan's eyes clouded as he asked, "Mr. Hale, are you suggesting that you wish to plead guilty?" The room paused, a shared silence enveloping everyone as they awaited the next moment. Hale exhaled, his breath unsteady, acknowledging the sudden turn of the trial. The nation was left reeling as the news broke of Richard Hale's sentencing. Life in prison, a sentence without the glimmer of hope for freedom, marks the end of a chapter for a man whose actions had cast a long shadow of fear. For years, families have been at the heart of the story, but the real champions of the case were not merely the lawyers or the... In a tale of bravery, it was a 5-year-old girl who discovered her inner strength, accompanied by a loyal dog who had. In the days that followed the sentencing, she never lost hope, and it was then that Emily found her voice for the first time. In the weeks that followed, she cradled Rex's face gently in her small hands and whispered her gratitude. Her parents wept, their hearts swelling with pride as they realized their daughter was finally discovering her path. As Rex wagged his tail and nuzzled her gently, it became evident that some connections were truly special, unyielding, regardless of how shadowy the world turned. There would forever be those, ready to confront the shadows, even if they moved on all fours.